Hi, we're going to be looking at page 10, number 23. Let's read D. Now remember, this is not the same as our open D. Our open D is lower in the staff. It is a lower sounding note. We are going to be looking at a higher up D. So high D, you'll notice it's also higher in the staff. Let's first go through by singing our note names in rhythm. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. D, 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 pressed. D, 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 pressed. D, 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 pressed. Good. Now, let's put our instruments up and let's pluck this while singing our rhythm. Okay? Make sure your instrument is up in the right posture, the right positioning. Cellos, you're sitting up nice and tall. Basses, you're standing up nice and tall. Violins and violas, you're either sitting or standing nice and tall, depending on what you are supposed to be doing. Make sure your left hand is set for good left hand posture. Violins and violas, your wrists are nice and straight. Your elbows are tucked under. Cello, bass, your elbows are up higher. They are above the shoulder of your instrument. Remember the phrase I always use, I should always see your elbow and I should never see your thumb. Your thumb's behind, okay, and your fingers are spread out. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, and D, 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 pressed. D, 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 pressed. D, 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 pressed. Good. Now we're going to do it with just plucking. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, and good.
Let's read D.
Now we're going to do this with the backing track and without our saying our note names, we're just going to pluck. Right now we're going to go through number 24 on page 10. Let's read C sharp. Notice that C sharp has this sharp next to it. It is not the same as the note we'll learn later, which is just C. It is C sharp. Notice that it is pretty high up in the staff. It is close to D. Check the fingering for it. And here we go. We're going to speak or sing our note names out loud. Remember, I prefer to say the word sharp instead of C so that we can remember the difference between C and C sharp later on. Here we go. Sharp, 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 sharp. One of the things I noticed here is that they only put the sharp at the beginning of the measure. They don't have to write the sharp next to every single note because it is assumed if there's a sharp at the beginning of that measure, all of the C's in the rest of that measure are also going to be C sharp. Okay, now we're going to pluck it and say our note names. Okay, make sure you have your good posture. Here we go. Plucking and saying note names. Sharp, 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 sharp. Now we're going to do it and just pluck. going to go through number 25, takeoff, on page 10. We're going to start by saying our note names. Remember that if there is a sharp at the beginning of the measure on the note C, then all of the C's in that measure are going to be C sharps. Let's speak our note names and go through with the backing track. Okay, here we go. D, 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 sharp, sharp, sharp. D, D, sharp, sharp, D, sharp, D. Okay, so we remember that the notes are sharp. Now we're going to go through and pluck and say our note names. Here we go. Check your instrument posture. Make sure you've got your wrists straight. Violins and violas are straight here. Cello, bass, your arms are up. Your fingers are curved and relaxed. Cellos, you're going to have to really stretch for that high D. Have those 4 fingers nice and open. Basses, you are up in position. Here we go. Speaking or singing our note names and plucking. D, 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 sharp, sharp, sharp. D, D, sharp, sharp, D, sharp, D. Now we're going to stop speaking and we're just going to pluck along with the backing track. Now we're going to look at number 26, Caribbean Island, one of my favorites. We're going to start by speaking the note names, then we'll speak and pluck, and then we'll play it. I am looking through and I notice that at the end of the measures, there is a repeat, which means I'm going to go through and play each time twice. You should do the same. Also remember that there is a difference between open D and high D. Open D is not only lower in the staff, but it's lower in pitch. So we're going to look for the low D versus the high D, the open D versus high D, and we're going to listen for the difference in pitch as well. We can also use open D to help us make sure that our high D with our 3rd or 4th finger is in tune. So first we're going to sing our note names. Remember that if there's a C sharp and you see that sharp later, that it is still C sharp in the measure. Here we go, singing our note names first. D, D, sharp, sharp, D, D, D. D, D, sharp, sharp, D, D, D. Repeat. D, D, sharp, sharp, D, D, D. D, D, sharp, sharp, D, D, D. Now we're going to pluck and speak our note names out loud. Here we go. You'll notice that there are brackets underneath as you're getting your posture set. You'll notice that there are brackets underneath some of the notes. That, you may remember from a few pieces earlier, means that you should leave your fingers down when you go to play the notes under the brackets. So with my finger down for high D, I will still be able to play my open D without picking up my fingers. Let's give it a try. Here we go. Speaking or singing and plucking. D, D, sharp, sharp, D, D, D. D, D, sharp, sharp, D, D, D. Repeat. D, D, sharp, sharp, D, D, D. D, D, sharp, sharp, D, D, D. Good. Now we're just going to play it without speaking out loud. Remember to leave your fingers down.